Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Alrighty, hello there, folks. How you doing? We're here today talking about Daniel Holtzclaw again. Those of you who remember the last video that I did, we were basically going over how this case got started, or how it basically got going against Daniel. The original claim from Janie Liggins. We went through, basically through a lot of things that were going on. We saw questionable tactics, obviously, from both investigators in that interrogation of Daniel. We saw the fact that they were ignoring things that were coming up in the investigation, and basically, there was also the, just so much there where they had already decided that Daniel was guilty, and for them it was just a formality of making sure that the conviction stuck. I mean, there's really, I see no other thought here. And you're going to see it here today. The reason why I see no other thought here, because there is no other thought here than to make Daniel guilty. And you can see that from the way that Rocky Gregory is cultivating these allegations. Cultivating is the word, okay? Because that's the appropriate word. That's what he's doing, okay? You'll find out about things like the list that was created by Rocky of all of Daniel's, the people, the African American prostitutes with drug habits that Daniel had contact with in the past, and that's how they went looking for for these women that eventually a bunch of them made allegations against him. Many of them, over 60% of them were proved false. Most of them before trial. But the jury also deemed another 5 of them were false. And really, if you look at it and you look at the methods used here and understand what the detectives were doing, you can realize that pretty much none of these are valid. All self-fulfilling prophecies. This was not a proper investigation. These two were basically looking to prop themselves up, and they were going to use Daniel as a podium or a mount, or as a base in which to do it. Daniel was just crushed underfoot by these two, who just felt like this was the case that was going to make their careers. That's the way it looks. It's the way it comes off. It looks pretty darn obvious. So we're going to be looking into today the Terry Morris allegations. Now this is the second person that came forward making allegations. Okay, but Terry Morris didn't finger Daniel originally. And she just said an officer. You'll see here today that she even says it was an officer with a black and white vehicle. That's not Daniel. Daniel has an all-black, newer vehicle, take-home vehicle. So there's a bunch of problems with Terry's story right from the get-go that don't point to Daniel, and it's all ignored. And you're going to see it here. And when you can see these tactics that are being used by Rocky Gregory and even Kim Davis, obviously the other lead investigator here from the Sex Crimes Division. I mean, when you see the tactics they're using here, you get a clear idea of how this all went wrong. The other thing to keep in mind is that Janie Liggins and Terry Morris are supposed to be the only ones that weren't approached by investigators and asked if they had been sexually assaulted. Okay, these are the only two that were claiming that they had been raped, but didn't and were bringing the claims on their own. Okay, now with Janie Liggins, we found out that she claimed certain things happened during the stop that forensic evidence proved didn't happen, and that was number one, when she claims her hands were on the top hood of his car, not hood, but the top roof of his car, as he patted her down. And again, when she said that his own hand was on top of the car as he was trying to block the view when she was performing the act that she claims that he made her do. So and there's no proof of his handprint on top of the vehicle either. So there's aspects of Janie Liggins' story that are provably false. And the fact that everything in Daniel's story is proven perfectly true. The only way that Kim Davis was able to try to claim that Daniel was lying was by going and calling his girlfriend to see if Daniel had tried to have sex with her when he got home, because Daniel claimed that he had tried to. His girlfriend didn't remember it, and tells Kim Davis that, no, he didn't try to have sex with me. So she immediately brings that back in there and thinks that means he's lying. And from there, it just becomes a bigger and bigger shit show by these two investigators. It's ridiculous. And I mean, there's plenty of plausible reasons why Dan's girlfriend may not have wanted to be forthcoming. There's the fact that she may not actually remember it because of the sleep aids that she admits that she takes when she's at trial and, when she's testifying. So there's plausible reasons for why she wouldn't remember it. And Kim Davis is just absolutely not willing to accept it. It's all these tactics that clearly show that the investigators are not looking to follow the facts and to follow the evidence. They're following something else, their own agenda. So, okay, so here we go. We're going to get into it. This is the Terry Morris allegations, and we're going to be pointing out to you here just a lot of the issues with it, and so that you can kind of see for yourself that they really are used there. This is really an exercise in shoehorning Daniel into a conviction that didn't really fit, especially when you see them starting to change the date and the time. They're literally making this crime travel through time and space. So yeah, it's a huge problem. Here we go.
Also noted in the report was that Lieutenant Holland noticed Christopher Shelton's vehicle was parked just outside the apartment also. We later learned that the apartment belonged to Shelton's new girlfriend, and that Morris was upset over that fact and had come to confront them both. Lieutenant Holland notes that she allowed Morris to walk to another apartment, knock on the door, and that the unidentified male who answered agreed to let Morris come in and sleep in his apartment. 3 days later, on May 27th, the Morris case was assigned to Detective Rocky Gregory for further investigation. As with Liggins's complaint less than a month later, Morris's complaint is taken very seriously. Detective Gregory begins by requesting the names of all officers who have recently pulled up Terry Morris's information on the patrol car mobile data computer, or MDC. On April 11th, 2014, at 8:46 a.m., Patrol Officer Jeff Sellers did a records check on Morris. Remember that name, Jeff Sellers. Detective Gregory then inquired as to what officers had run Morris through the Varuna database. That check showed that Daniel Holtzclaw had run Morris on May 8th at around 9 p.m. Both inquiries showed that Morris had no warrants at the time, and in both instances, Officer Sellers and Officer Holtzclaw were not anywhere near the downtown Oklahoma City rescue mission when they encountered Morris. Detective Gregory next sought the AVL, or GPS history, of Officers Sellers and Holtzclaw on the dates Morris claimed she was sexually assaulted, May 20th and 21st. Sergeant Sellers was listed as light duty and was not working on the streets on those dates. Officer Holtzclaw was working patrol on both nights. Detective Gregory noted that on the 21st, Holtzclaw was downtown for a county jail arrest, but his patrol car's AVL showed no unexplained stops or irregular behavior. Detective Gregory then expanded his search to all patrol officers who came within a 2-block radius of the city rescue mission that registered 0 speeds on the patrol car's AVL. That inquiry turned up nothing.
Okay, I just want to point out that although Terry Morris has been telling a consistent story so far, and that's what the officers have been noticing, and they're taking it seriously, the point where Detective Rocky Gregory runs that information and finds out that on the night in the area that she's claiming that this all happened, that there's no officer's AVL showing them to be in that area. Like, nothing came up. So that should have been one possible thing to make them go, okay, well, maybe these, allegations aren't as rock solid as we may have thought. But, I mean, that should have at least been a thought in my mind for them at that point. Because if she's claiming a police officer did this to her, but there's no police officers in the area of where she's claiming it happened, according to the AVL, I mean, to me, that's a suggestion that possibly she's either mistaken somehow, or or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, she claims it happened on May 20th or 21st, and Daniel Holtzclaw and this gentleman Sellers, were having contact with her on the 8th and the 11th. So you can see the kind of the discrepancy between where and when this thing was happening. So I just wanted to point that out. No officers were anywhere near the area she claimed this happened when she was telling this consistent story that was believable, right? Okay.
Detective Gregory continued his search for Morris after hanging up with Shelton. At 5 p.m., Detective Gregory drives to the city rescue mission because he has been advised they couldn't release any information unless he was there in person. He is told that the last time Morris was at their facility was on May 20th.
Okay, so that bit there was to show you guys that they had independent information confirming the May 21st, that she was at that shelter. Like she was saying when she was leaving it. That was what she was saying, basically, her original story. So, she is at that shelter. So, it's interesting in that sense. So, this is the story she told consistently, right? But by the time she gets to her third interview, Rocky has essentially, I gotta say, it's in a similar way to what was done to Brendan. They've broken her away from her original narrative, and from there on, she never tells the same story again. So I wanted to point that out, that it's independently confirmed by the shelter she was in that area on May 21st. So that makes that date seem more, credible. And, like I said, that's when you see that they end up moving away from this date and the way they do it, you'll start to understand why this is such an issue. So
Morris claimed the first person she reported the rape to was Christopher Shelton. This would have been just minutes before Shelton called 911 on May 24th, 2014.
So I'm just going to ask, folks, what's more believable? That this actually happened on the 21st or 20, right there around that time, and that she was telling this Mr. Sheffield, I think his name was, whatever, telling him on the 24th about it? Or do you think it happened like on the 8th or the 11th? And she waited nearly 2 weeks to say anything. Suddenly, 2 weeks later, she's inconsolable. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying what's more likely? It's more likely that this event she is talking about would have taken place on May 21st. So, I mean, it would have been fresher. You know what I mean? It would, So that's just something I wanted to point out.
Officer Thomas said that when he and his field training officer arrived, the first thing that she told them was that she had been raped by a police officer and that rape occurred just a few days ago. According to Detective Gregory, Thomas recounts his interactions with Morris and her story, and they match previous reports. That said, I personally did note one difference. In this interview, police rookie Thomas now states that Morris was seated inside the patrol car when she was forced to perform oral sex. In his original report, he stated Morris was outside the patrol car. Detective Gregory apparently missed this detail and did not ask for clarification. Detective Gregory did, however, note that according to officers on the scene, Morris appeared to be consistent in her telling and retelling of her story. Morris also self-disclosed that she was a prostitute. When Detective Gregory asked rookie officer Thomas if he believed Morris, his response was, quote, "Maybe."
Okay, so I thought that was interesting there, where you find out that the detective that originally went out on the 911 call for Terry, that he's saying there, when asked whether or not he believed her, he said maybe. Well, I think that's interesting, folks, because coming up here pretty soon, I'm going to be showing you a point where we're listening to her, Terry, and she says she's acting in a certain way, that gave me the same feeling of being unsure now of what she was saying. So I'm going to be showing that. And then something later I'm going to be showing you where I became very certain that her story wasn't true. Certainly not the one that she changes her story to. But we'll get to that. So, but I did want to point that out, that even the officer originally on scene that night, even he had some doubts about her story. Just thought I wanted to point that out for you.
The next day, June 3rd, at around 7 p.m., Detective Gregory is contacted by a confidential informant, or CI, referred to as Cal. Cal said he had just spotted Morse at Northeast 26th and Urban League Court and that a patrol officer now had her in custody. Detective Gregory immediately drove to that location and met with Morris. When he arrived, Patrol Officer Kyle May stated that Morris was not happy about being detained and had been banging her head against the metal cage in the patrol car and was asking to be allowed to leave. In fact, Detective Gregory noted in his report, quote, Morris immediately advised she did not want to go through with the investigation in regards to her sexual assault report on the unknown officer. Morris further stated that she did not want to pursue this matter any further and would not cooperate in the investigation. Detective Gregory, though, was not dissuaded. In fact, he basically lied to Morris when he let her believe that she had to come to the downtown police headquarters and fill out a refusal to prosecute form so that they could honor her wishes to be left alone. Feeling she had no other choice, Morris agreed. The following is a portion of the recording of Detective Gregory and Morris's first interview. This recording has been edited for time. A redacted version of this complete video recording will be posted to this episode's homepage at holtzclawtrial.com.
Okay, Terry Lynn, I'm sorry I took some time. Thank you so much for coming down.
I don't know what police to trust anymore.
Okay, well, I don't even know who the guy is. I understand your concern, okay? And like I say, I've worked sex crimes a long time, okay? And I've put cops in jail. I put handcuffs on cops. We've been very difficult to have this guy running around Oklahoma City.
But somebody else can do it. I don't want to. I just want to leave it alone. I want to try to get these men. I just want to get this out of my...
Okay.
I just want to be left alone.
I understand, and I'm not trying to harass you, okay?
I take a lot of medicine. I just want...
Well, like I say, I'm not trying to harass
I know.
you, okay? I really...
I know.
I'm just trying to look out for a lot of women out there.
I know.
And
I just can't, I can't do it. I'm not strong enough. I can't.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to make clear here that, you know, I feel terrible for these ladies that Detective Gregory and Davis, you know, I feel they diminished these ladies by doing what they did, by going out and trying to put words in their mouths and the things that have been done. But the thing that troubles me here is that we know that the night when the 911 call came through, we know that Terry was very much, that Mr. I think his name is Shetland, that was her, she had romantic involvement with him, and it would seem maybe she was trying to, you know, rekindle that, or trying to woo him back, or she wanted him back, or whatever, and maybe was playing for sympathy and claiming to be raped by a cop that night. And I'm not, and it's like I say, I give her full credit and give her consideration. But what's making me say that is because if it was because she was caught up in her feelings for, you know, a former lover and all that, and wanting to generate sympathy with him, that would be one way she could do it. But then, not only that, is when you look at this, when she's in there, you know, and being asked about all this, all she wants to do, she doesn't want anything to do with it. She's just like, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want anything to do with it. You know what I mean? What I'm getting at is it would suggest that night when Mr. Shetland was still there, and that she was still wanting to get back with him, or whatever it might have been, that she was, you know, obviously still willing to tell the story of being raped if it was going to generate potential sympathy for her. But now that situation's gone and bye-bye, she's not interested in the rape story anymore. So, not saying it's not true, not saying she's, you know, not saying anything on in that sense. All I'm saying is that this is where I began to go, well, I wonder if it was just something to generate sympathy with Mr. Shetland. So it was a thought that creeped into my mind as I heard her speaking that way. So, all right, let's move on.
After the interrogation, Detective Gregory decided he needed to contact Terry Morris again. And once again, C.I. Cal was able to locate Morris and contact the police who detained Morris for Detective Gregory. Not to be too cynical, but what Detective Gregory claims happens next is like straight out of a script of a low-budget cop movie. According to Detective Gregory, the moment Morris sees him walking up to her, she exclaims, quote, "He did it again, didn't he?" Cue the dramatic music and insert the eye rolls. I don't mean to be sarcastic here, and it may seem out of place, but trust me, I'll be getting into a plethora of provable lies by Detective Gregory in the coming episodes. Needless to say, and conveniently enough, that comment was not recorded. According to Detective Gregory, Morris was willing to cooperate in looking at a photo lineup and discussing details of the case, but that she didn't want to be taken back to police headquarters. Detective Gregory had Detective Daniel Higginbottom show Morris the photo lineup and note her response. While you're able to get a feel for how a photo lineup is conducted, since there was no video in that clip, you don't really get any sense as to which specific photos Morris is reacting to. According to Detective Gregory's report, Morris initially tentatively identified 2 officers as potential suspects in her sexual assault: Officer Jeff Dutton and Officer Daniel Holtzclaw. But as you heard, she changed her mind several times and continuously stated she was uncertain and confused. It's also important to know who was not included in the photo lineup shown to Terry Morris. Detective Gregory intentionally left out Officer Jeff Sellers from the mix. I find this interesting. As previously reported, Gregory knows that Officer Sellers had had contact with Morris recently. More importantly, Officer Sellers has a relevant and disturbing past. In January of 2006, the Oklahoman newspaper reported that Officer Sellers had been fired from the department as the result of an internal affairs investigation that determined he had had sex with at least one prostitute while in uniform and on duty. That prostitute reportedly made a monetary claim against the city for alleged damages. Binding arbitration later forced the Oklahoma City Police Department to rehire Jeff Sellers. Detective Gregory was asked if he found it concerning that Officer Sellers had had recent contact with Morris and that he was also known to have sex with prostitutes while on duty. Detective Gregory claimed he didn't really know anything about that incident, even though it was widely reported on the news and was a topic of much conversation within the police department. As disturbing as the fact Officer Sellers was left out of the photo lineup is, exactly how Detective Gregory creates his photo lineups is even more concerning.
Okay, wait. Let me get this straight. So, this guy, Rocky, is a sex crimes investigator. And he's investigating potential sex crimes committed by a cop. And he doesn't know about this guy Sellers? What? Wouldn't that be like the first thing you would do? Is go and run a background check on all the officers at OKC or at the Oklahoma City Police Department? Wouldn't that be like step number 1? So, and plus the fact that it was in the news and it was talked about at the department, his claim that he had no idea of it, to me, is disingenuous. Personally, that is a very disingenuous claim. But how can that be an excuse that he doesn't know about that? That's bull. I mean, that to me, If he actually doesn't know about it, he's terrible at his job. If he does know about it, as I suspect that he did, and just was ignoring it, then he's just a terrible, terrible person. And he's corrupt. And who knows what the hell he was doing. Yeah. So that's bizarre to me. I just, couldn't let that one go by without saying something.
I am quoting from page 3312 of the jury trial transcript. Question: whenever you assemble a lineup, what are you trying to do? Detective Gregory's answer, quote, basically what we do is we get 6 pictures together and then we have who we think maybe is the possible suspect somewhere in the middle of them. And we're just trying to see if the victim can identify who we think it is. End quote. This detective just admitted they allow their bias to dictate the direction of their investigation all the way down to what photos are selected to show potential victims.
Okay, so you hear Mr. Bates there talking about the bias of Rocky Gregory, and it is considerable. Obviously, that what he said there about the photo lineups and all that, but what's also I think interesting is the next thing I'm going to play for you, folks. She's going to tell you. He's going to ask her right now, and she's going to tell him what kind of police car the officer was driving. Okay, and well, when it's done, I'll come back and tell you the problem with it. So here we go.
It freaked me out.
Now you said it was a car like this one, the older police car?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is another instance where it shows Rocky Gregory's bias. Because, folks, he specifically asks her what kind of cop car it was that the cop was driving. And she said it was the black and white version. That's the older version. Okay? Folks, you want to know why that's a problem? It's because Daniel Holtzclaw was driving the brand new version, the newer version, take-home vehicle that was basically an all-black vehicle, police car. Okay? So a black and white, when she says it's a black and white car, the police car, that's a problem. And this shows Rocky's bias, because he's ignoring this stuff. And he goes further than just ignoring this stuff. Not only is he ignoring this stuff, but he goes ahead and takes it a step further and basically attempts to insert narrative. So in that kind of thread there, this next clip that I am showing you is really for me my intent to show just how he was doing that, how he tried to kind of reinvent the narrative a little bit here. So, what you need to know is that between the time with the photo lineup and all that, Terry obviously went on her merry way. Well, eventually, she gets arrested on an unrelated charge. She's in lockup and she can't get out. She doesn't have the money to get herself out and she's stuck. She's been in for a week, so she reaches out to Officer Gregory, Detective Gregory. And it's interesting because, number one, he claims... Okay, so you got to, first of all, understand there's all kinds of stuff here. Number one, there's clearly... he met with her at one point in between the photo lineup and this time at the jail when she was arrested. There was one time where they met and they apparently had a talk. You can tell in the documents, and Brian Bates goes over that in the podcast. And then, by the time you get to this interview that I'm about to play for you, okay, at the beginning of it, you can clearly hear that they are finishing up going through the story the first time, because you can still hear Terry over in the background, and telling the end of the story as Rocky Gregory is turning on the recorder and getting ready to go through it again. Now, this suggests that they are talking to her, going through the story with her before hitting record. Now, Rocky Gregory tries to claim at trial that the reason why that is because he didn't know that they were going to be speaking to Terry there. But that's a lie, because one of the things he says in at one point is that we knew you wanted to talk to us, so we came over, and he had a recorder with him. So that story doesn't wash. So there was clearly them talking to Terry before they hit record. It suggests that he was monkeying with things, because then her story changes drastically, folks. You're going to see her story change very drastically now. It's going to suddenly be in a different part of town and on a different date of May 8th. Almost, like I said, almost 2 weeks prior to her original claim of when this happened. So you can see that this drastic change happens after they're obviously having private conversations with her. So the other thing here is that when you hear her talk right now, the thing you're going to hear her say is in response to Rocky Gregory. And I want you to listen to the words that she uses. Similar to the way that I tell you guys to listen to the way that Brendan says when they ask him, how come you didn't tell us that about Teresa being shot in the head? And he tells them, I couldn't think of it. The wording, folks, the wording. Okay, I want you to pay attention very carefully to the wording that Terry uses here, because I think it's important.
Tell me this.
I'm getting all confused again.
No, hey, you're doing fine. You're doing fine, okay?
Because I can't think of all that stuff no more.
Have you drink pot?
I can't remember all that stuff. It's like jumbled up in my head anymore.
Okay, so did you guys see that? The wording there? I'm confused again. Right? You don't generally get confused when you're telling a story that happened to you, because you're recounting events straight from how they happened in your memory. You don't generally get confused. When you get confused is when you're trying to recite something that somebody has told you to say. That's when you can get confused. Generally, that's when confusion can happen. But hey, we go on to some of the other things she's saying. I can't keep all these little things in my head. They're getting all jumbled up. Okay, our memories don't generally get jumbled up like that, especially powerful ones like that one would have been. They kind of tend to sear themselves into our memory so that we can't forget, ever. Even if we want to, we can't. So, for me, listening to her speak that way, it sounds like she's trying to tell Rocky Gregory, I don't like this. This is making me uncomfortable. This is making me very uncomfortable. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. So, but I leave it to everybody else to decide for themselves.
Now, I didn't know if you liked Dr. Pepper or Coke. I thought that was okay. You like Coke?
Dr. Pepper is my favorite, but I like all pop.
Oh, well, that'll work. That'll work.
Now, I will say one thing for Terry Morris, though. She has impeccable taste. So, all right, moving on.
And I was like, I told you I don't have no warrants or nothing, so can I go on? He said, open your pants. I said, what? He said, open your pants. He said, you got some panties on? And so I'm like, looking at him like horrified.
Did you unzip your pants?
Yeah, what was I supposed to do? He the police.
Did you pull them on down?
No.
Okay. Did he move?
He just moved like the little flap to look.
Did you have on?
Part of my little zipper part.
Did you have on underwear?
Did I? No.
Okay. Could he see your vagina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you think as you listen to that bit, folks? You know what I mean? That she unzipped her pants, and then Rocky asks, could the officer, whoever, see her vagina? Ladies. I mean, ladies out there, you guys wear pants. You guys can answer this question better than anybody. When you unzip your fly, I mean, is there any pair of pants that you own? Let me ask it this way. Is there a pair of pants that you own, ladies, that if you zip the zipper down, people could actually see your vagina? Right? It's not. Right? I mean, they would have to be like the baggiest hammer pants ever, with like a zipper that goes down to, ridiculous amount. I mean, it's just not right. I mean, most likely this Terry was most likely wearing some kind of jeans or something tight. You know what I mean? To accent and accentuate her curves, because that's her trade. That's what she does, right? So, you know what I mean? And so these are most likely something tight fitting. But hey, unless she was wearing like the baggiest hammer pants ever, with a zipper that went down to her knees. You know what I mean? Practically. Then maybe. But I don't know. Do you guys see what I'm saying there? That's just another kind of unbelievable statement she makes. That is, you know, it's like, I think she says, oh yeah, he could see it, because she feels like that's more sensational. It's you know, it's more fuel for the fire kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's like she wanted to say yes because it was more, it made it seem worse, right? But the fact is, it's impossible. I mean, to me, it's impossible. I'd love to hear what all you ladies think over in the chat here, since you guys are ladies and wear pants all the time and are in the best position to know whether or not what Terry is claiming is possible. So, all right. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
And then he said, raise your shirt up. He said, I already had my underclothes on. I was actually on my way over my friend Terry Wayne's to go lay down.
So you told him what?
Okay, so when you hear her talking about she was going to go lay down at her friend Terry's house and stuff, this is all back. You got to remember, this is not on the May 21st that she was originally talking about. This is now a whole new date in a whole new area. And so this is going back to March 8th, because they're matching this up with Daniel's AVL data from his vehicle. Okay? But here's the thing. That AVL data backs up Daniel, not her. Again, we have that situation where the AVL data continues to back up Daniel and continues to discount parts of the stories of these accusers. So, what I mean by that is she's claiming that Daniel, on the stop on the 8th, she's claiming now that this is when the rape took place, was way back then, and she's claiming that afterwards Daniel gave her a ride. And she says that she had Daniel drop her off at her friend Terry's house, who you heard her referring to there. And that she went there to lay down and whatever, and blah, 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 blah. But the AVL data shows a whole different thing. The AVL data shows that from where he pulled her over, he drove forward a bit, I think maybe, I don't know, quarter mile, I don't know, something, maybe to the next street, and made a left, and then went down to the end of that block, or maybe a couple blocks down, and then stopped next to a curb on a corner. It turns out, Daniel didn't know this, but it turns out that was about 2 or 3 doors down from Terry's mother's house. Okay? So what was happening there is Daniel was most likely dropping Terry off at a place where Terry asked him to drop her off. But she asked him to drop her off a couple doors down because she didn't want everybody at her house to see her getting out of a cop car. You understand, right? That's what's going on there. All right. So to put this into a bit more perspective, you want to get this series of events. You understand how I just described the drive from where the supposed stop and rape and oral copulation, forced oral copulation supposedly happened and everything, right? Okay. Now, you heard me say that he drives a short distance and it's where Terry's mother's house, basically a couple doors down from Terry's mother's house. Okay? What does that tell you? Well, folks, here's what you know if you listen to Mr. Bates' podcast, but this is where Terry Morris grew up. This is her stomping grounds. Literally, she grew up there. Her mom has been living there for a long, 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 long time. And so this is where Terry grew up. Okay, this is a neighborhood where everybody knows her. Okay, let's back up, okay, to the traffic stop. Okay, this traffic stop is, as I've just pointed out to you, happening in Terry's stomping grounds, where people would know her. Lots of people would know her, and would most likely notice what was happening, if it was happening. Okay? But not only that, across the street from where this stop is happening is like this museum. It's like a historic cultural center or something of that sort where, there's people. No matter what, this is, as I'm saying, in a place that's not exactly hidden and in the neighborhood where Terry Morris grew up. And lots of people would know her, recognize her, and, it's just, that's what makes it more unbelievable that this actually happened. Plus, you keep in mind that the stop itself took 14 minutes. Okay? And there was a whole lot of things discussed, a search, all the normal, just like all the things with the Ligon stuff, all those things that had to happen, okay, and the conversations that had to take place. Because obviously Daniel found a crack pipe on Terry that day. So there was a discussion around that, right? 14 minutes. Does he have time to do all those things and orally forced oral copulation and all that stuff? You know what I mean? So that's another aspect of this where it's as Luke Berg would say, strange credulity, where it's essentially it becomes more and more impossible when you try to cram more and more of these events into these really tight 14 and 15 minute time frames. You see what I mean? So that's another aspect of it, but you know, it's essentially very difficult to believe that this would have happened in the neighborhood where Terry grew up, and there's just nothing to back it up. And the AVL data shows that Daniel stopped her where they both say that it happened on May 8th. And the AVL data shows that he then got in, drove, and pulled over about 3 doors away from her mom's house. And that's most likely where she got out. She claims that's not what happened, that he drove on and dropped her off at her friend Terry's house. So she wasn't getting dropped off at this guy Terry's. There's a lot of things here that get proven to be incorrect. And like I say, this second story she's telling now even changes again when she gets to trial. She makes more changes to it and goes back on some things. It's very, very, you know, it's like I said with Brendan, once they break him from the original story that he was telling because he was telling it from memory, once they broke him from that, it's the same thing with Terry. Once they broke her away from the story she was telling with consistency, she can't tell a similar story afterwards. So that's where we're at. So this is, to me, folks, what I wanted to point out today is the fact that Rocky Gregory and even Kim Davis were not interested in justice, and they're ignoring obvious facts and still hell-bent on shoehorning Daniel into this conviction, even though the evidence is not really coming up in their favor. Now you got to also remember that these are the first 2 victims that came out making accusations, folks, and we know that with Miss Liggins, we know that there were aspects to her story that she said, 2 specific aspects of her story that she said that were completely disproven by forensics. So we know that those 2 things she said were untrue. And we know that Daniel never, you know, they haven't proven anything he said was untrue. Kim thinks that she's proven his statement about trying to have sex with his girlfriend when he got home. She thinks that she's proven that untrue. But I think she's mistaken there. Because, you know, well, I think Daniel's girlfriend gives the best explanation at trial when she talks about the fact that she takes sleep aids and gets into really deep sleep and sometimes doesn't remember things that she does, you know, in the middle of the night. And so that makes it completely plausible that Daniel did try to have sex with her, but Kim Davis doesn't want to accept that. She needs it to be a lie Daniel told so that she can, you know, continue to proceed on this, you know, and so it's just bizarre and bewildering, but mainly what I wanted to show here today was that Rocky Gregory was definitely using, you know, shady tactics, you know, BS tactics. It's like I say, injustice wasn't what was being sought here. I believe that Rocky and Kim were seeking their own grandeur, and I believe they saw Daniel as the path to that. And that's stupid to me because I think it's pretty clear that there probably was an officer at the Oklahoma City Police Department that may have been doing some things, that may have been part of all of this. And it could be that maybe somebody smart at the police department knew who was actually doing all of this and somehow got rid of that person. Or maybe that person's still there and it's getting swept under the rug. Who knows? I mean, honestly, who knows? So we'll continue to researching this case. We'll continue to see what comes up, and we'll continue to see what new developments there are regarding Daniel Holtzclaw. But yeah, like I said, this investigation is crap. You know, just like the Avery Dassey investigation. Completely backwards, completely stupid, and, you know, it's just, yeah, not right. I mean, it's like I said before, I mean, how can you go into his past to people that he's pulled over, written tickets, and arrested before, and start asking them to say they've been raped by a police officer and all those things? I mean, you're the self-fulfilling prophecy aspect of it, all of this. This case is a mess, and I can't believe the courts let this through. And, you know, I mean, it's when there's so much there to prove so many statements false, and to create so much doubt. I just don't understand how this was able to happen. Well, I guess I kind of do, because I know how wrongful convictions happen. But I guess the really, really disturbing part about this one is that they went after their own. You know, law enforcement went after their own here, and this guy was a good cop. He was a good cop. So, in order for Rocky and Kim to be able to you know, get a boost in their careers, or whatever it might have been, you know, the grandeur, the fame of it, you know, from prosecuting this big case, you know, yeah. So whatever it was, it's a mess. And like I say, you can see here from what I've shown you today, Rocky is absolutely ignoring anything, you know, that proves Daniel is innocent, and he only cares about things that he can use to make Daniel look guilty. And that's what they call confirmation bias.
Well,
Well, maybe I shouldn't be scared of DIR. Maybe it's,
there you go.
maybe I let people scare me too much about it. But maybe y'all can get me in DRI.
I wish you would have told me before that was a different location.
I know, but I was scared after I told y'all that.
But then you told me again.
I know, I was still scared.
All right, so this is another interesting kind of aspect. I think it kind of helps inform us about, you know, Terry's character, you know, a bit, where she's talking about being scared, you know, like she shouldn't be so scared. What she's talking about, DRI, what she's talking about there is like a rehab program. She's looking to want to get back into rehab and finish her program and get herself kind of straightened out. Well, she's talking that way now. She's been in jail for a week. She's sobering up, you know, she's detoxing, and some, you know, real nice wholesome thoughts are beginning to pop into her head, and she actually, I believe, is truly considering rehab again. The trouble with drug addicts is they feel that way when they're in, but then once they're let out of the jail, that little devil appears on their shoulder thinking, you know, let's go see Chewy, you know, and then they end up going and seeing the guy, the Connect, and it all starts over again. So, but I'm not saying that would have happened here, but you can tell she's wanting to get back into a program, but you can tell she's scared of the program itself. I mean, that tells you how kind of, you know, easily, you know, frightened she is. I mean, she was afraid of just a particular, you know, drug rehab program. So, I mean, so there's that. But then there's the other side of this. She talks about being, why did she, you know, she's basically saying, you know, he's asking her why she changed the location, or, you know, or why she originally told them that it was on a different day in a different part of the city, right? And she's basically answering by saying she was scared, that she was scared, as she was saying, right? And that is all. So let me explain that, why she's saying she's scared, right? She's saying she's scared because she's saying that, number one, she didn't say it happened in, I forget where they call it, this particular part where she changes the story to. It's called, like, I don't, it starts with a K, something, you know, and it's an apartment buildings basically over in a completely different area from downtown Oklahoma City, and maybe Kensington or something like that. But so she didn't want to say she was over there. According to her, she didn't want to say she was over there at that place because that's the drug spot. And she knew that if she said that, her boyfriend would dump her, or her boyfriend wouldn't want to have anything to do with her at that point. Now, this is interesting to me, because we know that we know that Mr. Shetland, the guy that called 911, who she originally told all this to through that 911 phone call and all that kind of stuff, right? On the May 24th, right? We know that she's, you know, she was, number one, interested in Mr. Shetland, but but Mr. Shetland says that they had broken it off. They'd been friends for years. They had been romantically involved for about a month, and he said that was, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. So he couldn't have been the boyfriend that she was worried about losing, because according to him, they'd already been separated for a couple months. Further proof of that, he already has a new girlfriend, and she's going over there to harass him at her place. In fact, his girlfriend is the one that called the cops on her when she was banging on the windows and stuff, right? So, for me, she's afraid of her boyfriend finding out, well, okay, who was her boyfriend? Because it wasn't him. and if she's chasing after him and pursuing him that way on May 24th, it leads me to believe that he was the guy she was after, that, you know, so I don't know who, I don't know what boyfriend she might be referring to that she was scared might find out that she was over at the drug spot. That's what I don't understand here, because it clearly wasn't him, and I don't see any other mention of a guy, or I don't see any other hint of a guy who's her boyfriend, because, well, like I say, if she had a boyfriend, what was going on there that night of May 24th? And clearly, they hadn't been involved. Those two hadn't been involved. So where is her boyfriend? Right. So, all right, that's basically where that's at. It's for me, by changing her story in this way, it makes it weird. But not only that, it's like, what was she scared of? Because, you know, I don't think she had a boyfriend. So when she says she's afraid that her boyfriend would find out where she was, I don't know. It's maybe there's more to the story here yet, but for me, that is a feeble a lie. You know what I mean? It's a feeble lie. Totally. So, I don't know. Anyways, just thought I'd point that out. All right, folks. That was my last clip. Wrapping it up talking about Rocky Gregory here and his very, very questionable ethics and tactics during the investigation into Daniel Holtzclaw and the allegations of the allegations against Daniel Holtzclaw. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you found it informative. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.